We're gonna take our time, slow down and design. Yeah.
So here we go. It's a big story, so I'll try and keep it short and down to an hour. But I've been working or living in permaculture since I was 12 years old. My grandfather raised me on his permaculture farm since I was 12, where I learned about the landscape and how to regenerate it and how to live from the land sustainably. It was an amazing experience growing up with the forest around me, regenerating degraded pastures back into a sustainable food forest, and then seeing that grow up around me too. So it's that gave me my set of values, ethics and principles, and has guided me eventually to Brazil in 2008, where us mob here, we all travelled around the Amazon together, got lost for a week, ate some piranhas, and learnt from the Indigenous people. So that's a lot of what frames my thinking, and that's a lot of what frames my motivation and design is Indigenous cultures and valuing those principles and ethics and sharing those through my travels as well. So for the past 4 to 5 years I've been working in Mexico, and I've also done an architecture degree which took 5 years and a lot of patience and concentration. I don't know how I got through it, but here I am. I've studied permaculture with architecture over those 5 years, infusing both of them intellectually, academically and practically. For me, the greatest empowerment is community empowerment and community engagement, and we've heard from so many amazing speakers here. It's really humbling and gratifying for me and almost overwhelming for me to speak at this conference. The university work I've been doing has been focused a lot on sustainably and promoting permaculture in Australia, regionally and around the world. I do it out of my own pocket, often losing money on courses and gardens, so doing it for the right ways and right reasons, which is ethically what permaculture is about. That's the core of it: care of people, care of the earth. So how I apply care of people is I work like most of my clients or most of my friends, amigos in Mexico. They should be here, but they're meant to be coming later. They're bringing my notes for me, so I'm just talking to the slides and out of my heart. Most of them live on $1.40 or $1.25 US dollars a day, and that breaks my heart. 26% of the Mexican population don't have access to clean water and clean and sustainable food source, which breaks my heart. They don't have political representation in the United Nations, which breaks my heart, and it really makes me emotional talking about it, but it's that emotion that drives me and powers me forward, and it's that gives me my belief in my work. A lot of the time I'm working in very dangerous situations, being shot at, which is quite fun. So if anybody's complaining about the rain, I just say, at least we're not being shot at. So it's a good time in Mexico, I love it. I've had a lot of violence against me, but that's only 0.1% of the population. The other 99%, the most beautiful people you'll ever meet. They've taught me so much about me, myself. Mexico, its struggle with the US, its struggle for cultural identity, preservation, and against empowerment and Monsanto. So a lot of my work is involved in preserving those food stocks and heritage food stocks and fixing up bad permaculture designs. So my first trip over there in 2009 was to start new permaculture projects. I did a lot of teaching in Mexico City. I did a lot of teaching in Puebla with Indigenous cultures under volcanoes. Got some pretty gnarly, pretty bad food poisoning there. It's pretty crazy. Did a surfing trip and then went back to teaching in the Caribbean, which is where it really took off, and the empowerment with people really sung to my heart and sung to my soul. And that's the essence of it, is helping people and identifying with the local culture and belonging to that culture. So I don't have so much of a strong family in Australia that I was brought up with per se, but my family is in Mexico, and they're the people that love me and cherish me for who I am, which is an amazing gift. And I don't see myself as part of them. Yeah, it's all part of the whole. And it's that essence I speak from. So it kills me to say that 90% of the world's population still don't have access to clean drinking water. They go to bed hungry at night. Sorry, just try not to get emotional. And most of them live on $1.25 a day. I tried to live on that wage for a month and couldn't. I was very lethargic. I couldn't think, I couldn't move. All we were allowed was a handful of peanuts, a few glasses of water, and a coffee for the day, and you can't survive on that diet, and just your mental energy collapses and your mind collapses. And that's how a lot of Mexicans are living, that's how a lot of Cubans are living, a lot of people in Central America. So I'm trying to direct my energy to fixing up those core ethical problems, care of people and care of the earth, always caring for people and loving our fellow human being. And it still kills me to see people living on the streets, but you always have to put that, it's hard to break down that facade in your own mind. But I've been eating at a lot of local street restaurants around Havana, amazing food and amazing people, and I've been hanging out with a lot of my Mexican friends who've been teaching me so much about the Cuban culture that's just so rich and diverse. The food here is quite unique to Mexico. It's quite different, but they're so close. It's a very different culture just from an observation, and that's simply because it doesn't have a land border with the US. So that's quite different and dynamic from that point of view. There's positives and negatives to that side. I think we can all identify with the observation and analysis, which is our core permaculture tool. And that's how we learn in permaculture. So that's how I teach my courses. I never go in saying I'm the white saviour with the ideas. I always go to learn with Indigenous cultures to start off with, from Mayans to Zicatelas to Oaxacans to, and there's a lot of knowledge in art, and there's so much knowledge in song, and there's so much knowledge in whistles, and there's so much knowledge in art. And combining these as different layers of understanding liberates the mind and liberates the soul, brings ecology as one with humanity, and that's where my work has been focused. So I've been focusing on fixing up mine food security in the Caribbean, 140 kilometres west of Tulum last time, fixing up their food security. A permaculture designer went in there and destroyed their food security. So we've always got to listen. And the number one thing that caused that, he didn't listen to their problems, and that just makes me really angry. He destroyed their food security, and I had to go in there and fix it up and tell them not to burn their soil and not to put charcoal into the atmosphere, to put the organic matter back into the soil, to grow food, to grow nutrients. They thought nutrients was meat, but obviously it doesn't give you the vitamins you need for your brain and health. So it's working. It's always the number one thing in Mexico for me is working with water security. Just access to clean water is a big one. I was working on a project 2 weeks before I came here, and I had to, like, you might have heard of Playa del Carmen. I was working in the slums 2 blocks back, or the favelas. But I had to wade through knee-deep shit for half an hour to get back to where I was staying, just to get back to where I was staying. But the hotels were fine because they had walls and concrete around them. So they cut off from culture, society and the land, but it's the people that really literally have to deal with the shit of their waste. And that also breaks my heart. And the only way we can get around that is rooftop gardening in Playa. I've been teaching rooftop gardening there for 4 years. Started a lot of community gardens at Bioregional Community Centre, and also made a lot of family and a lot of friends there. And I wouldn't trade any of that experience for the world. And I prefer to wade through shit than walk on the beach to see my friends. Like, it sounds a bit bizarre, but we've been doing a lot of things with bamboo. We're just critical thinking. So I adapt all my courses to the local bioregion, reading the ecology, reading what's there, teaching them the local ecological literacy, teaching them the patterns that they see in their nature around them, teaching them how to read the soil from the vegetation. And this is knowledge that is lacking, and they're just so hungry and just so desperate for the knowledge. It's very inspiring for me. So I charged for my first course in Playa, but that's going to fund another course in Monterrey in the north of Mexico, where we're working with 25 ex-cartel street gangs on a peace rehabilitation project that we've been working with them for 2 years. And it's not me that's the lead, I'm just a little consultant on the side really with some okay ideas. But it's working with blue economy and transition towns, which is what this is all about behind me. So it's taking it from a 25 housing or 25 dwelling suburb and making that work really well over the last 2 years. And now we've got support from the local government and favelas and architects and all these amazing resources, just because we started off very small, started off on what we can manage. Instead of coming up with this massive scheme to save the entire planet, we were just working on helping people have clean water and good food. And I haven't done a lot of the work, I just give them ideas, feedback. So that's helped me a lot through my architecture and learning process. So I always like to be proven wrong. It's the best way to learn, is to be proven wrong. You learn nothing if you win an argument, you always win if you lose. Yeah. So it's always good to lose, because then you learn, you know how to get better and evolve into the future. So the real revolution is the evolution of the mind. If you shall seek, you shall find, that we all come from the divine. And that's a quote from Public Enemy, a rap band. Give it up. They got some good songs. Yeah, but it's those type of lyrics that keep me motivated and keep me centred, and that when we work together as brothers, we will never die together as fools. And that's Martin Luther King. Want to hear some Buddha quotes? I've got a lot of them, but they're the thing that keep me centred and keep me humble and keep my humility there, so I can always learn from people. I'd love to talk to all of you, because we've all got something to learn from each other, and it's such a beautiful family we have in this room too. So hopefully I can learn a lot from you guys over a few beers at the Convergence. Más cervezas. Yeah, muy bueno. Café con spaghetti, café con ron. So, yeah, más at Convergence. Estoy aprendiendo español, but muy poquito, but getting better. Poquito español. So, bien, muy bien. So, yeah, I like to learn as much Spanish as I can, because that allows me to learn and articulate as well. And there's a lot of knowledge lost in language, and there's a lot of knowledge lost in art, and it's just trying to preserve that. So let's get stuck into this PowerPoint. So this has been my work for the past 2 to 4 years. That's where it is in Mexico. That's a book that inspires my design for the other 90%, people who live on $1.40 or less a day. In Mexico, it's about $1.25 a day, and that's not enough for clean water and nutrition. and you see a little blue stripe, that's live straw. It costs $30, but they can drink like 30 litres of water through it, and they won't get diarrhoea and contamination and die of diarrhoea, which is the #1 cause in the developing world. Not so much in Mexico, it's more the alkalinity and availability of water over the year. So that's where we are. We're up in the desert, up in the northwest, and that's a little, it's not favela, but I haven't learnt the Spanish term, of San Pedro, just on the curve. These are the organisations I've been working with or consulting as part of through various people there. There's people here from the project too. So obviously permaculture, don't know much about that. No, it's just joking. The University of Monterey, which provide me with all the site data and all the consultations from the local community, so they go in there with an ethical premise and all of that. Then evolve in the United Nations Development Program, which is pretty messed up at the moment. It's got great goals, great language, great aspirations, but they keep pushing the goals out a year and a half at a time, and they have a conference which costs them $300,000 each time and push it out for another year and a half. So that really pisses me off because people are dying. You could actually, with this project, we could actually fix up every house with just the money from the last UN conference in Monterey. I think it was in 2009. So that's fucked. Like, I don't mind swearing because it is fucked. So it's about holding our politicians to account, whether it's riot, protests, graffiti, illegal gardens, we do it all. Then Casa Familia, which is home of the seeds, which has changed the blue economy. So I don't have much value for my life because I put it on the line all the time, but you've got to die somehow, I think. So one of my role models is Cameron Sinclair, who's the founder of Architecture for Humanity, and he has amazing designs that transcend culture and develop humanitarian aid through design. Better? Can you hear me? And then also he's worked on a lot of projects, basic geometry. He empowers students, so instead of them being afraid, they have hope. Instead of being lost, they are found. And he has a lot of amazing competitions and development schemes. So I encourage you to look him up. So we'll get into it. So don't bother reading the text because I'll just talk about it. It's just meant to make me look smarter. The Venn diagram is the centre of the ideas and of the spectrum of the scope. So we all should know it as permaculture designers that locks together society, ecology and community, but I use it to evolve and test my ideas constantly. It's so important to always be testing your idea of sustainability, testing your definition of sustainability, evolving your definitions of sustainability, evolving your definitions of permaculture, always moving forward, never stand still, never be happy with the status quo, never. And also I like it so much, it's going to be my house plan. I've bought one TP, so you can imagine that's, if you know a floor plan, it's going to be 3 TPs interlocked, so I'm pretty crazy, and then I'm going to build a geodesic dome on top, so muy loco. And that's basically the slide, I know, array, but the question is, I've been working on this thesis to evolve the United Nations Development Program for 2 years. It's taken a lot of energy and a lot of work. I've cross-referenced it with Mike Davies' Planet of Slums. Please pick holes in it because I need to know the weak points to make it stronger. It's also got a lot of theory, practical, but at the end of the day it's about empowerment. So these are the terms that are pretty unique to this presentation. So all our amigos and amigas from the great colonies of Latin America, or not colonies, independent countries, will know what Casa Familia means, which is home of the seed. Ecocentric, which is a design philosophy we should all know as permaculture designers. Permaculture, I think we all have a definition of that, or some idea of what it means. Permaculture, which is combining architecture and permaculture. So I'll do a dance at the convergence, but I can't quite do it with a microphone in my hand. It's quite a beautiful piece. And then favela, which is a Portuguese term for slum. And then regeneration, which is moving beyond sustainability, keeping moving forward, keeping testing, keeping pushing, always push further, never be happy with the status quo. Why there's people in poverty, why 90% of the people are in poverty, none of us should be happy. No man can be truly rich, no woman can be truly rich, nobody can be a billionaire while people are in poverty on $1.40 a day. So that's why I might appear a bit heavy-minded sometimes, because I've always got this churning over, always trying to evolve it. And then sustainability, which is my definition, which is combining those three spheres to form regeneration and community to keep it moving forward, which is what the project's managed to apply, which is amazing. It's gone further than I could have ever dreamt of. Project overview, so that's right brain, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like creative, that's a big art piece I did to understand the landscape and culture. It might come across as a bit spiritual and ecocentric. And then the left one's analysing the landscape and the curves and understanding the key line and understanding where the boundaries are. So it's important to understand where we sit between both those hemispheres of our thinking mechanism, our brain. But this was a key problem up in the left-hand corner. We can see that the community is divided in half. It's just my bad sketches, sorry, but we should all be drawing every day as designers. It's a matter of fact, because that's how you test and evolve your ideas. That's the biggest thing I learnt from uni, was draw every day, no matter what it is, no matter how bad it is. It's a different form of communication. Even if it's a mind map, it's drawing, just massaging your brain to work better. And then, like, through that diagram to the left, I understood why they were trying to rezone the national park to increase the area. But my advice to Ali Ha and Zuro was to increase the density of the favela, so we didn't have to rezone the national park. So it'll be interesting to see how that's evolved over the last 2 years since my last trip to Mexico. But at the time, I think it was the 1999 census, San Pedro, where are we? Sorry, I've had a complete blank. Yeah, San Pedro in Monterrey was the poorest suburb in Latin America. $1.40 a day, no clean water, no clean food. But the disgusting thing about this, San Pedro, the wealthy part of it, was the richest neighbourhood in Latin America. That is absolutely filth. That's a scar on our representation of humanity and design. It's all been designed. It's just bloody bad design. And then always work through intent, action, and outcome, and always question that, always evolving. So I don't like to talk about things I haven't done, so I always do my work and then talk about it, always moving forward. It's also very important to learn from Indigenous cultures. That has been stated through so many presentations in so many beautiful and new ways for me. But the way I learn from it is from my architecture education, the planning, the thought for seed preservation, built into the very culture, into the very geography of the landscape. So in Oaxaca, they have beautiful cities, beautiful terraces, but then everybody lives in this maze of concrete down below it. And there's one temple in Tichuacan where you can clap your hands and it comes back as a bird song, or you can whistle and it comes back as an echo. So they understood acoustics that well, they could actually design space to reform sounds. And we still haven't got back to that level, so to think they were primitive is the absolute wrong mindset. they were very advanced thinkers in design and agriculture, but it was a bit of a confusing one to I still don't understand the complexity of the culture. I know there's a lot louder Indigenous cultures than others in Mexico, some very marginalised and some being pushed to the edge of extinction. And that just blows my comprehension. And the heart and soul of Mexico's Indigenous cultures in Oaxaca, and they sell a lot of Indigenous arts, but it's also the poorest state in Mexico. And it's got, it's maybe rich, like poor economically, but it's the richest state culturally. And it's just trying to harness that culture and bring it forward in my thesis. All this is available online, so if you can get the internet. So this is testing their geometry and design. So this is my process for evolving the kind of concrete housing condition. So at the moment, who knows of Cemex? Cemex, yeah, cement, Cemex concrete. So they're a very bad company. That's why we see concrete favelas and concrete slums all through Latin America. It's because they're so corrupt, they pay off politicians to make them use the concrete. So it's just founded on bribes, the Spanish culture, and it's still inherent today. And they framed one of my friends, Zuro, one of his good mates in Monterrey, for not using Cemex concrete, and now he's in prison for 7 years for not using Cemex concrete. And they framed him with drugs, put them in his apartment, and now he's away in prison for 7 years just for not trying to support a bad and corrupt business. So it's very dangerously politically and also very complex as well. So the outcome of this design was just understanding the landscape and how I could use endemic sustainability and endemic ecology to improve the existing patterns on the ground, the existing housing patterns, the existing food patterns, to help it move forward, centralise the servicing, so the water and sewerage, so you only had to put one sewerage and water centre in for 4 or 5 dwellings instead of one for each. And then instead of using concrete, I suggested we use super adobe or earth bags, because the current model's $1,500 a house, and they're houses people don't live in, or if they do live in, they get lung infections and smoke infections and bad health outcomes as well. And also, it was about designing for the edge, all those kind of permaculture principles, and manipulating the zones as well. So I've used a lot of different permaculture strategies, but it's still absolutely critical to design the course for the local culture and the local problems. Because if you start talking about the humid tropics, which are relevant for the south of Mexico, around the Caribbean, around Playa, around Cancun, if you start talking about that up in the north where it's a cold desert, people just switch off. So instead of wasting our critical time together on that, I formulated for the strategies and the resources around the local area, and then just combining those outcomes to form up a solution. Yeah, so that's the current housing condition. It's not very good. That costs the World Bank $1,500 to build that shitty house that no one lives in, but we can build an earth bag one there for the same price. That'll actually improve people's quality of life, improve the climatic outcomes, improve the performance outcomes. So it's also about the really bad construction techniques used in Mexico. They're very, very locked into the concrete form of construction. So it's breaking all these barriers of knowledge down and reforming and restarting again from the basis of ecology and sustainability, regeneration. But I've had some amazing outcomes from my course. I've had some amazing students come forward. They've really taken it and run with it, and it just makes me very proud and very humble to have a few of them here. And that was a mob trying to get in on Monday, so we managed to save up enough money to get them here, but not enough for the ticket to get in, and now they're in and loving it. So welcome to the worldwide permaculture community, guys. I think they're not well off. They're not by far the poorest people I work with, and they're not by far, but by far they're the most motivated, and they're the people that inspire me. They're the heroes of the story. I'm just the guy singing the song from that songbook, but I'm just doing what my soul tells me to do and nothing else. Also, looking at the combination or the contrast even. So it's important. A good way of coming up with new ideas to tackle old problems is to contrast the old against the new, or the working against the non-working. And that was a critical strategy in formulating my thesis too. My thesis, which fits into this, which is kind of another supporting layer, so we've got different layers, and then we pull through different permaculture strategies, help define different outcomes. So my thesis is a lot of your guys' work. You don't even know you're in the thesis, so you might get a bit of surprise when you see your name. And a lot from Bill Mollison and Darren Doherty, a lot from David Holgram, and all our elders in the room too, which are quite a shining light and example for us to move to. But I also find it just as important to empower new people, to empower new students who just did their PDC, because often after even the courses I teach, they're lost. So we teach a day of like where to next, or identifying local business opportunities, local money making opportunities with permaculture, not necessarily teaching permaculture. So one of them was in Playa del Carmen, for example, rehabilitating the coastline for erosion control for hotels, because hotels are literally washing into the ocean, and the sand is washing away because they dumped it there, and it's just washing away because there was no erosion control. So we went down to the beach and identified erosion control plants that you can plant for free and that will take off, and they're pioneering species. So it's looking at these key strategies to make new and innovative business models too. And the community response there is what brought me back each and every time. Not necessarily the problems, but the people. Yeah, good family. But there's also a lot of, I can't even begin to say the amount of resources I've pulled into my thesis to come up with this array of solutions, or this array of thinking. It's been quite a massive overhaul of my thinking and my belief system. I've used a lot of UN best practice and a lot of UN worst practice. There's so many organisations in the UN, like UN Habitat, UN Development Programme, blah, 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 UN Health, organisations, and they all have a lot of different offices around the world, and it's not really coordinated together as a united nation, and it's all very manipulated by the World Bank. But the World Bank provide the balls to my thesis. They provide the power, the punch. They give it the facts, the critics. They take down big players like Cemex. They take down big players like corrupt politicians, and that's because they control the world financial system. So it's a big player to be batting the ball with, but I think it's one we've got to play the game with. This is more of my drawings and sketchbook. So up to the top left-hand corner, we've got a renovation or an innovation for an envelope design. So using passive ventilation, shading, cooling, cheap solutions, available solutions with available materials, with available knowledge resources, with available species. So it's about tessellating through those patterns, about tessellating through those scales. You've always got to be testing your design at different scales, always drawing. It's the only way you can evolve design. And it's the only way you really avoid problems without having to make them first. So this is like can't really see it with the contrast, but it's a sketch of Teddy Cruz's work. He works a lot on social projects in Tijuana and empowerment with community. He was originally a Mexican, but he migrated to the US, to California, and he went back and taught the locals how to make houses and make dwellings, make community, clean water, grow food. So he's one of the architects that inspire my work, but there's a disconnection between his commercial work and what he's practically done, and it was, at the end of the day, it was working with the local resources, and it's not, let's plan this for next week, let's plan this for tomorrow, let's do it now, it has to be done now. We don't have clean water, let's do it now. And that's the attitude I distill in my courses. So I teach it, and then we do it. We don't talk about it, I teach it, we identify the resources, then we do it, we keep it moving forward. So yeah, key project issues, it's dealing with the slope, erosion, all those basic permaculture principles too, but really making that a part of the architectural and planning solution, the urban outcomes. And when I go back to Monterey, we were continuing to develop the community gardens and the market gardens and help bring that produce to the populace of Monterey, turn it into a transition town, turn it into a blue economy, turn it into a permaculture example. And we've got all the players in the basket ready to go, ready to act. And we've got, I don't know how many people come into the course for free, because people who live on $1.40 a day or even $5 a day can't even afford a $20 course. So that's why we have to teach it for free, and that's why we must teach it for free in the developing world. And it breaks my heart to hear locals come up to me it breaks my heart for locals to come up to me and actually begging me to do my course for free. And I'm like, of course you can do it. I'll help you. I'll work through your problems. I'll sit down with you. We'll have a coffee. We'll have a cup of tea. We'll get it done. And the only reason I charge a little bit of money is trying to recoup the taxes on my air flights that I've been saving up for 4 years to go back to Mexico. So it's a very small budget I operate on, but everything I do make from the course, I reinvest back into the local community in terms of seeds, materials, ponds, bags, whatever we need to get it done. And that's what keeps me going too. So it really, that is the heart of permaculture, and that is the heart of what Bill teaches and what David teaches our elders. Not to make money out of poor communities, but to help them. It's not about exploiting them for money. That's messed up. That should never happen. And it is happening, unfortunately, and that breaks my heart. It makes me cry. It makes me sad. But I do what I can to teach for free, to give knowledge for free, because they are so intellectually eager and engaged and empowered by it. So that's what inspires me. And it's okay, like the whole principle of permaculture that Bill taught was to make money from a few courses, say in the States or in the UK or in Australia, and then give that money back to the community, like in Africa, in South America. And that's why we've got such a big global family at the moment. And to only solely focus on the business model eats at the core heart of care of people and care of the earth. And I know there's a lot of amazing people in this room doing exactly that, but I've found little bits of projects around in Ghana, Uganda, that have done the exact opposite. So that have gone in there, oh, I'm the white saviour, I'm going to save the world with permaculture, and completely messed up their ecosystems. What little food security they had, gone, nada. So that's what drives me, is fixing up the core ethic and foundation of permaculture too. So I know I might be offending some people here, but it's true to me, and it's true to my experience, and it's true to what Bill taught me over 11 years when he was raising me on the farm. He taught me how to feel, how to learn, how to teach, how to understand. And he was the toughest man I ever knew. Like, he made me the man I am. And I don't say it as a part of ego, I say it as a part of legacy. Permaculture transcends generations, it transcends culture, it transcends all of us. It's bigger than me, It's bigger than the projects I work on. It's about community, which is the core, which is the heart of permaculture. So that for me is a driving force, and he really distilled that in me. And he was the toughest man I ever knew, like really tough, hard, and the only time I ever saw him cry was when he was watching the news and he saw people dying in poverty in Africa or in Zimbabwe. That's the only time I saw him emotional, because he was so connected with people suffering, the earth suffering. And it's that message he distilled in me that I'm carrying forward. I'm carrying forward that legacy, and I'm trying to do the best I can on what little I've got, on what little is available to me. So that's where I'm coming from, ethically, from a value point of view. So it's not, please don't think I'm saying it as part of ego, it's a part of legacy, it's a part of carrying it forward, it's a part of intergenerational knowledge exchange, and I'm just paying it forward for free, the knowledge he distilled on me. Not because I feel I have to, because I want to. It's what I love, it's what I do with my life, and I would have it no other way. This was another big kind of architecture myth I had to pop, like people, place, program, but how I distilled it in a lot of my projects, in particularly Uganda, around Lake Victoria, and in different parts of Mexico. Like, I'm only a little permaculture designer starting out. How I distill it is identifying the true value and the true ethics of Indigenous cultures, and always listening. Like, sometimes I go into a community and just listen, and that's sometimes the most important part, is listening, learning, then teaching. Like the Mayan elders, I was teaching to the Indigenous Mayan elders in the Caribbean, and they said, really, to make a difference here, you have to live in the community for 2 years. Then they'll start to replicate your design systems, but not tell you about it. Say, oh, I've got a water tank on my roof, or I'm collecting my rainwater. And that's a communication technique you have to use. And it is happening, but it's still empowering the right people in the community. So yeah, functional requirements, food, nutrition are at the core of it. It's about growing food, it's connecting with the earth, it's feeling the scars on your fingers. I've got like some new scars on my hands from machetes in Playa del Carmen, from harvesting bamboo to build gardens with. And I just love getting new scars from overseas. That's my favourite one there. That's from harvesting a tree on Bill's property. It's in the shape of V, and I like to think of it as in V for Vendetta. And then I've got another pretty big one. That one hurt a lot. Bled out a fair bit from that one. That was climbing a cliff as a child. Got another one from a chainsaw on my leg, where I tried to cut my leg off with a chainsaw. But that wasn't so funny. Like, I nearly bled out in the rainforest, so you're not going to have a good time if you do that. So this is the statistics behind some of the projects, and it's about really evolving that United Nations Development Program, evolving the criteria, keep them moving forward, putting the principles up and really holding them to account, gripping them by the balls and twisting. Like, it's pretty brutal, but that's nothing compared to seeing the poverty I've seen people live in, which is a lot worse, and I could talk about a lot more confronting things, but that's how you have to deal with it. I could talk about this all day, but there's some of my drawings and different projects, but strategies, intent, action, outcome. Speculating too, so like projecting into the future, what do we got kind of look for in not 5 years, 20 years, 50 years. Like, this is a very bad design. Like, it's one I did 5 years ago, but at least I've learnt from it. I'm willing to admit I'm not the best designer in the world, but I'm trying to do what I can. And I think if we just nourish ourselves, believe in our soul, we will all move forward together as a big permaculture family. And that's the other thing I'm really proud of, is how far permaculture's come together. At the IPC1 International Permaculture Conference in Brazil, there was 80 people, 70, 80 people at the conference. Now we have a massive family of 400 people, so it's happened. And now we're all here together. So please learn from each other and come and say good day. And just to finish off, like, the names are wrong on the slides, but top right hand corner, he's my mentor. He's the guy that brought me into permaculture, made me do an architecture degree, and here I am back in Cuba 5 years later. That's Ali Sharif. He's done some amazing projects, works with Indigenous cultures on honey, on propagation, made some mistakes, made some amazing connections, learnt some awesome things, and taught me a lot of amazing things, and taught me how to understand and appreciate Latin American Indigenous cultures. Like, when I went to Brazil, I had no idea. I'd been living on this tiny island off Antarctica in the South Pacific for 20 years, and then I was in the middle of the Amazon, and he really made me feel at home. He taught me how to read and learn from the rainforest. He taught me how to appreciate culture and identity, taught me how to appreciate art, and he taught me how to be humble. So there's my bibliography. It's pretty extensive. There's a lot of resources in there. You could probably read from a year from that and still keep on learning. But at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about, it's about the guys I've been working with. And if they want to come forward, I'd like you all to give them a big round of applause. Instead of applauding me, applaud them and their amazing work. It's not about me, it's about them. It's about their great work. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for that. It's been really a good thing, I think, for you to do this presentation near the end of the conference, and just going to show how far permaculture can really stretch and cover all these areas that are a big struggle planet-wide. My question for you is quite a practical one, and it's something that I've struggled with a lot. When you're working in a place that's so dense and where people are so need the space for private dwelling so much, how do you justify to a skeptic the use of the land for gardening and for food?
It's really about finding the edges and the niches. So that might be a little pathway on the street where you can grow bamboo for food material, biochar. There's 100 different uses for bamboo, or it might be gardening on the roof if it can structurally support it. But it's about managing density as well. Like, the ideal density is the average of 3 houses per hectare over the whole landscape, and then you can provide adequate food, water, security. And when I see these massive towers go up, I just can't imagine how you'd support that population. So yeah, it's a good question and a really intelligent one to answer and to think about and to draw through, definitely.
Thanks, Stuart. Great presentation. How can we get a copy of your thesis, please? I've got lots of people I want to give it to.
I'll give you the web address and you can just punch that into Google and download it straight away.
Thank you.
Same with this presentation here. Yeah. The thesis, just type in Stuart Muir Wilson. Stuart spelt the English way, not the American way. M-U-I-R, Wilson. And then type in favela, and then type in permaculture, hit enter, and the first link will be a PDF of my thesis. And please share it among yourselves, spread it out. It's not quite finished. The main body of it is, but not necessarily the manifesto part. But there's a lot of work in there already, so spread the word.
Yeah, you talked about reconciling some of the gangs that are participating or there in this favela. What sort of things are you thinking to do in relationship to that?
So we've been, Zuro, one of my friends in Monterey, has been working with them for 2 years, and he's really the heart of that project. He's been making community gardens for them, so it's just simply reconnecting to the earth and up valuing that product and then selling it on. to the wealthier Mexicans, so it's just working on that basic parameter. And they're nice people. Like, I'm not going to say they're bad people. They're in a bad trade and in a bad place, but it's what you have to do to survive. And when they see an opportunity like education to open the door, they run right through it. So, thank you. No más? Dos más? No más?
So, I have to say that was a very inspirational and lovely story. Thank you very much for doing that in Mexico. Really appreciate it. And I would like to ask something. We've been working, trying to get into the government, trying to make them understand certain things, certain basic things. And for the first year, it was just very struggling, lots of problems, lots of turnouts. But as we are told, the problem has the solution itself. So we conceptualize the idea of philosophically creating something like a Trojan horse. So in 4 years of working there, Mexican government is now funding 60% of our work there. And I would like to ask you, how have you been improving the relationship with the government, with the local governments, and all those problems that they create sometimes in order to get into the newspaper, especially when we just had elections, and well, it was a really mess.
Yeah, thank you. Can I get a round of applause for that man, because he's working on amazing projects. He should be giving the presentation, not me, because I'm just a little fish in a big pond. But governments, I've only got a very little understanding of how the Monterrey government works. I've got a few contacts just from the people that brought me to Mexico, to the high places. But at the end of the day, it's proving it practically, and it's how it worked in the Amazon to get it further there. So, yeah, it's just working from the practical basis always.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. Just 2 quick questions. Could you repeat
One.
That's very
Solo
quick.
uno.
Could you repeat the web address for your PDF?
The thesis question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it? Favela dot something on it.
Yeah, like how can Permaculture, which is combining permaculture...
No, just the web address.
Oh, just the web address. Stuart Muir Wilson, my name, off the program, Favela, Permaculture. That'll come up with my thesis.
Great. And the other one was, you were talking about 3 houses per hectare. How many people per house, roughly, in that area?
Probably about 40, 45, with a good dwelling ratio. Yeah. Because at the moment it's 6 people per dwelling, which is just a mass of concrete blocks, which is no privacy, no windows, no doors, no insulation.
So that's 40 people per hectare?
Yeah. Yeah, it might be more. I haven't done the calculations for a few years, but it's, yeah. My mind's not really engaged with that aspect, sorry, at the moment.
Thanks.
Stuart.
Gonna take our time, slow down and design.